Richard Feynman could remember equations he had read 30 years earlier. Names, dates, footnotes, all of it, and pull them out of his head like a man reaching into a kitchen drawer. In 1965, beside a chalkboard at Caltech, older colleagues watched him write out a problem from scratch. He had brought no notes. The desk beside him stayed empty. No reference book, no cheat sheet. Just memory. Sharp, instant, ruthless. And here is the strange part. His brain held nothing special. No photographic gift lived inside that ordinary skull. He did not even score higher on IQ tests than the people seated around him. What he had were 5 quiet habits. Small, almost boring rituals that turned everyday recall into something close to superhuman. The first habit explains why teachers always remember more than their students. Another one reveals why Feynman carried 12 questions in his head for 40 years. And the last one started in a college cafeteria back in 1948 and ended with a Nobel Prize. Most people forget what they read by Friday. You will not. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how he locked information into long-term storage and pulled out facts decades later without breaking a sweat. Quick question before we begin. Which state are you watching from? Drop it below. Then tap that subscribe button and stay with me. Good. Eyes up. Coffee on the desk. Notebook open if you've got one nearby. Because each habit you're about to learn unlocks the next one. Let's start with the habit that explains everything. Habit 1. Teach it like a 12-year-old. In the early 1950s, Richard flew down to Brazil to teach physics at the University of Sao Paulo. What he found inside those classrooms stunned him. His students could recite Newton's laws word for word. Entire textbook pages came out of their mouths by heart. On every written exam he handed out, they scored beautifully. But ask any one of them what those laws meant in the real world? Silence, blank stares, frozen smiles. A whole room of bright young minds who had memorized everything and understood almost nothing. They had stored words, not ideas. Feynman called this fragile knowledge. Facts that live inside your head but shatter the second somebody presses on them. And here's the part that should sting a little. This is exactly how the average adult learns today. You watch a video, nod along, tell yourself you'll remember the main points. 3 weeks later, not a single useful detail remains. The fix is almost insulting in its simplicity. Pick the thing you just learned. Now imagine a curious 12-year-old sitting across the kitchen table from you. Sticky fingers, big eyes, and zero patience for jargon. Explain it to that kid, out loud, in plain English. No fancy terms, no academic dressing. The second you stumble, freeze, or reach for a phrase you don't truly understand, that's the gap. That's where your knowledge ends and your bluffing begins. Go back, reread, rewatch, try again until the words pour out without effort. Why does this drill work so well? Because the brain remembers what it produces, not what it consumes. Listening leaves a faint trace, like a footprint in soft sand at low tide. Speaking burns the idea into deep storage, like cutting it into stone. Researchers at Washington University proved this in 2014. They split students into 2 groups. One studied a passage knowing they'd take a test on it. The other studied the same passage knowing they'd have to teach it. Same time, same material, same effort. The teach it group remembered roughly 28% more than the test group, even though no real teaching ever took place. Just the expectation of having to explain it changed how the brain encoded everything. That's why teachers always remember more than their students. Their brains were primed for output, not input. Try this tonight, before bed. Pick one thing you read this week. Walk into an empty room. Now teach it. Out loud, no notes, to an invisible kid. You'll be shocked at how much you assumed you understood, and how little of it was truly yours. That gap, my friend, is where your real learning begins. And that's just habit 1. The next one is the strangest of the 5, because it lives inside a leather notebook the world didn't even know existed until Feynman died. Habit 2. The notebook of things you don't know. In 1988, after Richard's death, his colleagues went through the office and found a strange leather notebook tucked between his journals. The title scrawled on the cover read, "Notebook of Things I Don't Know About." Inside was not failure. What he'd built was a map. Across nearly 4 decades, Feynman had quietly written down every confusion, every half-formed question, every concept that didn't quite click on the first read. Page by page, year by year, he'd return to those entries and rebuild his understanding from the ground up. That notebook wasn't a record of weakness, it was the engine of his genius. Most adults do the exact opposite. They keep notebooks of what they already know. Neat highlights, color-coded summaries, polished bullet points. It feels productive, looks productive too, but it teaches the brain almost nothing new. Knowledge you already own does not need protecting. The half-grasped, embarrassing kind, the stuff you almost own, is where memory gets built. Think about it this way. A muscle never grows by repeating a weight it can already lift. Brains work the same way. You need resistance, friction. That small ache of, "I don't quite get this yet," is what wakes up real learning. Here's how to copy this habit without overthinking it. Grab a cheap notebook. The uglier the better. Fancy ones make you afraid to write badly in them. At the top of page 1, write the same title Feynman used. Then, every time something you read or hear leaves you mildly confused, jot it down. Not the answer, the question. That fuzziness in your head, the moment your gut says you faked your way past something in conversation last week. Once a week, sit with that notebook on a quiet morning and pick one entry. Just one. Go research it until you can teach it to that 12-year-old from habit 1. Watch what happens over 6 months. Those scribbled confusions slowly transform into your sharpest, most permanent pieces of knowledge. Because the brain holds tight to anything it had to fight for, and it discards anything that came too easy. The label on that notebook is the secret. Most adults stop learning the day they pretend they already know enough. Feynman lived nearly 70 years and never stopped admitting what he didn't. Memory thrives in the cracks between what you know and what you don't. Now stop for a second. The next habit isn't a memory trick at all. It's the reason flashcards, apps, and mnemonics all eventually fail without it. Most adults have never even heard of it. Habit 3. The 12 favorite problems. Feynman once shared a quiet secret with a young physicist, one he believed every serious thinker secretly relied on. He called it the 12 favorite problems. The idea works like this. Carry around in your head, at all times, a list of 10 to 12 big questions that matter deeply to you. Not little curiosities, real obsessions. Problems you'd happily think about while shaving, while driving home from work, while standing in line for coffee at the gas station. Then go live your life like normal. Read books, watch documentaries, listen to dinner conversations. The moment something new arrives, a study, a quote, an odd statistic on the radio, you instinctively test it against your 12. Does it shed light on any of them? Could it crack one open? Might it kill another one off? When the answer is yes, Feynman wrote, the world thinks you're a genius. Because while everyone around you forgot that fact within an hour, you slotted it into a question you've been carrying for years. It locked in like a key sliding into a waiting door. Memory researchers have a clinical name for what's happening here. They call it elaborative encoding. Plain English version, the brain holds on to information far longer when it connects to something you already care about. New facts hanging in empty mental space float away within days. Anything tied to a personal obsession stays for decades. Here's your assignment for tonight. Take 10 quiet minutes with a blank page. Phone in another room. Door closed. Write down 5 to 12 questions you genuinely wish you understood better. Not what you should care about. Forget what sounds smart in front of friends. The things you actually care about, in private, when nobody's listening. Maybe it's why your father grew distant after he turned 50. Could be about why certain marriages last 50 years and others fall apart at 8. Or how some men stay sharp into their 80s while others sink into a fog by 65. Whatever they are, write them down and reread the list every Sunday morning over your coffee. Within weeks, you'll notice something almost spooky. The world starts speaking directly to your list. Articles you skim, podcasts you half listen to, even random remarks at dinner suddenly start handing you puzzle pieces. And every piece sticks, because memory needs a question to hang on. Without questions, the brain has no shelves to put new things on. The information just hits the floor and rolls away. Stay with me, because habit 4 is the one neuroscientists use to test whether memory has actually formed, and almost everyone fails it on the first try. Habit 4. Rebuild from scratch. When Feynman wanted to truly understand a new subject, he did something his colleagues found borderline ridiculous. He threw the textbook away. Not literally, of course. He'd close the book, slide it across the desk, take a blank sheet of paper, and try to rebuild the entire concept from the ground up. Equations, examples, logic, even the history of how the idea came to be, using only what was already in his head. Every time he hit a wall, he'd note exactly where, open the book just long enough to grab that one missing piece, close it again, and start the whole rebuild over. He called this his blank page test. The reason it works has nothing to do with intelligence and everything to do with how memory is wired. Rereading a page feels like learning, but the brain barely registers it after the third pass. Your eyes glide across familiar lines. The mind drifts. Familiarity quietly creates the illusion of understanding, without any of the substance behind it. That illusion is dangerous. It's why so many men finish a 300-page book, close the cover with satisfaction, and a week later cannot summarize a single chapter. They mistook the feeling of reading for the act of learning. Rebuilding flips the entire process on its head. Every blank space is a question. Each filled space is a small, hard-earned victory. With every cycle of remembering and missing and remembering again, the information gets wired deeper into long-term storage, exactly where you want it to live. Cognitive scientists at Purdue University put real numbers on this back in 2011. Students who reread material scored around 30% on a test taken a week later. Those who closed the book and wrote the main ideas from memory scored over 50%. Same students, same material, same study time. Wildly different results. Apply this drill anywhere you want lasting knowledge. Finished a chapter of a book? Close it. Sit back. Write the key idea in your own words on a blank page before moving to the next one. Watched a documentary last night? Walk away from the screen and sketch the timeline from memory before bed. Sat through a meeting full of decisions? Before opening your laptop, jot down what was agreed on in your own handwriting. You will fail at first. That failure is the entire point. What you build, you keep. What you only read, you rent. One habit left, and this might be the most important of all, because without it, the first 4 don't even hold for long. Habit 5. Play with it. The final habit is the one Feynman lived by more fiercely than any other, and it's the one most adults lose the moment they finish high school. Play. The famous story goes like this. In the late 1940s, Richard was burned out at Cornell. He'd lost interest in physics. The constant pressure of being labeled a genius had crushed the joy out of his work, and for months he barely produced a thing. One afternoon in the cafeteria, a bored student tossed a dinner plate into the air. As it spun, Feynman noticed something tiny. The plate wobbled at a different rate than it rotated. That little detail grabbed him by the collar. For no good reason, no deadline, no publication, no career upside, he spent the next several weeks calculating the math of spinning plates. Pure play. Total curiosity. His colleagues thought he was wasting time on a useless puzzle. Out of that ridiculous little game came the work that would later win him the Nobel Prize in physics. Here's why this matters for your memory. The brain does not encode boring information well. Ever. You can sit at a desk for 10 hours, drink 4 cups of coffee, and force yourself through a thick textbook. And a week later, almost none of it will remain. Yet you can watch a movie once, 20 years ago, and still quote half the lines without effort. The difference between the two isn't intelligence. Willpower isn't the answer either. It's emotion. Curiosity, surprise, amusement. These flood the brain with chemicals that act like glue for memory. Dopamine, norepinephrine, the good stuff. Without that chemical glue, no amount of grinding will hold information in place for long. So the habit becomes this. Whatever you're trying to remember, find the angle that makes it fun for you. Twist it. Question it. Argue with it out loud. Invent silly mental images that would embarrass you if anyone could see them. Ask yourself, what if the opposite were true? Then push back. How would I explain this to my best friend over a beer? And probe, where does this idea break in the real world? Treat every subject like a toy in your hands, not a chore on your desk. Forget the homework label. Drop the sense of duty. Just a toy. Feynman said something close to this in a 1981 BBC interview that still gets passed around today. He said the imagination of a scientist is constrained by reality, which makes it harder than fiction. But that constraint, he insisted, is also where the joy lives. You're solving a real puzzle, playing with the actual universe. Most adults stop playing at around 40. That's also when they start complaining that their memory isn't what it used to be. The connection is not a coincidence. Boredom forgets. Wonder remembers. Bringing it all together. 5 habits. No apps, no supplements, no genius IQ required. Just a notebook, a pen, and 10 quiet minutes a day. Teach it like a 12-year-old. Keep a notebook of what you don't know. Carry your 12 favorite questions everywhere you go. Rebuild from scratch instead of rereading. And above all else, play with the ideas like they belong to you. Do these for 90 days, and the fog most adults sink into after 40 will begin to lift. The sharpness you thought belonged only to your 20s will come back, but anchored in daily habit this time, not raw youth. The only difference between you and Feynman is permission. Permission to teach badly at first. The freedom to admit what you don't know. space to obsess over questions nobody else cares about, the license to play with ideas like a kid again. Give yourself that permission tonight. If this helped, hit the like button below. It tells the algorithm to show this video to other curious minds your age. Subscribe and tap the bell for more breakdowns of how the world's sharpest thinkers actually thought. Stay sharp. Keep your curiosity alive. I'll see you in the next one.